Losing you didn't break me, but your truth did.
Rain fell in long, unbroken sheets, soaking every umbrella it touched and turning the cemetery grounds into a swamp of waterlogged earth. Each step I took sank my shoes deeper into the mud, as though the ground itself was pulling me backward into memory. The tombstones around us melted together in the misty gray, indistinct and forgotten, except for one. The sleek, gleaming coffin stood apart, too pristine, too final, like a foreign object dropped into the middle of a dream I never wanted to have. I stood slightly apart from the rest of the mourners, shoulders curled inward beneath a saturated wool coat. At 38, I was a man who once believed in order, an architect by trade, someone who trusted blueprints and timelines. But none of that mattered today. Today, I was simply trying to stay upright, to keep from unraveling. My hands dangled by my sides, fingers twitching in vain for something, anything to hold on to. But there was nothing. Emily had been my wife. Just 3 years. Not enough time to even get to the good part of the story. It went by like a blink, like the quiet turn of a season. We talked late into the night, made plans for places we'd never reach. Tuscany in spring, a house by the water where the mornings would stretch out in sunlit silence. I'd promised to build it. We spoke of a nursery, of old films and sleepy Sundays. All those ideas dissolved before they ever solidified. Cancer crept in like a slow erasure, stealing her one piece at a time. Her laughter faded first, then her voice, and finally, even the sparkle in her eyes dimmed like the last glow of a fading candle. I held her hand as long as I could, tried to memorize her warmth, but it vanished like breath fogging up glass. Toward the end, she barely spoke, her emerald eyes dulled by pain and medication. The woman who once lit up every room could hardly lift her gaze. I hadn't shed a tear. Not at the hospital, not at the service, not now in this bone-soaking rain. My grief wasn't loud or theatrical. It was silent and crushing, wedged deep in my chest like a stone I couldn't remove. It scraped from the inside, pressing harder with each breath. Some days, I felt like that stone was all I had left of her. It carried everything, words I never said, promises we didn't get to keep, and all the time I foolishly thought we still had. People drifted away slowly, murmuring kind words that vanished into the rain. Someone gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze. A quiet voice said, "Hang in there, Tom." I nodded automatically. I'd become good at that, offering polite responses while trapped behind the invisible walls inside me. Behind the smile was a man alone with his own heartbeat, echoing in the silence like a ghost. Clara lingered, Emily's sister, soaked through, her cloak clinging to her, hair stuck to her face. She looked at me like she was searching for some trace of Emily in my expression. "Tom," she said gently, her fingers brushing mine. "Come by later. You shouldn't be alone." I hesitated. "I don't know what to do now." "No one does," she said quietly. "Just don't disappear. Don't shut everyone out. Emily wouldn't want that." I couldn't respond. My eyes stayed locked on the coffin, halfway lowered into the earth. The slick rope slid over the wood with a sound that turned my stomach. "We were just getting started," I whispered. "She had plans, France, vineyards, red shutters on a house, a dog." Clara's voice cracked. "She wrote me about that. She wanted to name the dog Pesto. Do you remember?" I almost smiled. A weak, broken smile. "She said pesto smells like summer," I murmured. I could still see her in our tiny kitchen, squinting against the sun, laughing as she stirred pasta. Clara rested her hand on my sleeve. "You could still build that house. Without her?" I couldn't say it out loud, but I knew it. None of it made sense anymore. She understood. She nodded, gave me a long look, then turned and walked away. Her footprints in the mud vanished almost instantly under the rain. The cemetery crew moved in with quiet efficiency, shovels cutting into the earth with practiced indifference. I didn't watch, I just turned and walked away. The truck was where I'd left it. The world felt muted, like someone had turned the volume down on everything. I didn't feel the rain anymore, just the emptiness pressing down on me like the sky itself. When I got home, the Cape Cod house I'd designed for us felt like a tomb. It had the light, the space, the porch we had planned to grow old on, but now it was hollow. Her watercolors still hung on the walls. Her blue scarf was draped over the sofa. I couldn't touch it. I let my coat drop where I stood and wandered through the house like a ghost. The grandfather clock ticked in the hall, a wedding gift from her parents. I'd always hated its ticking. She loved it. Said it reminded her that time never stops. Now, each tick sounded like the beat of a heart that had stopped too soon. I collapsed into the chair by the front window, staring out at the wet street. It was the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows your dog's name. Emily loved it here. She planted flowers, waved to neighbors. She made this house feel alive. I just existed in it. My eyes drifted to a pile of condolence cards stacked on the coffee table. I hadn't opened any. I didn't want to. What were words going to do? Bring her back? I leaned my head back and shut my eyes, trying not to feel anything at all. A sound on the porch snapped me out of it. A soft tap. The mailbox. I hadn't checked it in days. Weeks, maybe. I dragged myself to the door. It was stuffed. Envelopes, sympathy notes, bills. I scooped them up and was about to toss them with the rest when one stood out. It was smaller, cream-colored, no return address. My name written on the front in a script I knew like my own breath. Tom Harris. I froze. Raindrops hit the paper as I turned it over. Yours, Amy. I staggered back inside, clutching the envelope like it was alive. My breath came fast. My hands shook. It was Emily's handwriting. No doubt, that playful curl in the N. The little loop in the Y. I could still hear her teasing me for trying to mimic it. But she was gone. She'd been gone for weeks. What was this? A trick? A mistake? Or something else entirely? My hands trembled as I opened the envelope, careful not to tear the letter inside. It was written on the same cream paper Emily used for notes and love letters. The sight of it alone made my chest tighten. Her handwriting was unmistakable. My dear Tom, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I hate how final that sounds, but there's no other way to say it. I'm watching you now, asleep in that ugly chair, trying to find words to say goodbye, but no goodbye will ever be enough. So I'm leaving you this instead. I knew it was coming, not because of some sixth sense, but because my body kept failing me even when my heart wasn't ready. I didn't tell you, not fully, because I saw how hard you tried to fix it. And you fix everything, Tom, but not this. There's so much I could say, but here's what matters. Live, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. There's still beauty out there. You just have to look. I've left you something. Think of it as a thread, a part of me. Follow it. You'll know when you see it. Don't close off. Don't disappear. I'm still here. You'll feel it. Yours, Amy. I read it again and again, hoping for some clue it was fake. But every word was hers. The voice, the warmth, the quiet humor. It sounded like she was right beside me. How was this possible? Toward the end, she could barely lift a pen, but the letter was fresh. Perfect. I stood up and headed to her old desk. Everything was untouched. Her pens, the paper box half full. I pulled a sheet out. It matched exactly. No hidden letters, no signs of forgery. Nothing. I sat back down, eyes stinging. I'd held back for so long, but the pain came now, raw and full. The sobs hit without warning, not quiet or polite, but deep and guttural. I bent over the letter like it was holy, like I could reach her through it. Outside, the rain still tapped the windows, but it no longer felt empty. Somehow, in that moment, she was there. Not in body, not in voice, but in something deeper. I pressed the letter to my chest. That night passed in a blur. I didn't sleep or eat. I just sat reading and rereading. By morning, the living room was bathed in soft light. Dust floated in the air like quiet reminders of time still moving forward. I was still holding the letter. How had she written it? Why had it only arrived now? Stiff and aching, I moved to the kitchen. The sound of the coffee machine was oddly comforting. I sipped the bitter brew and stared out the window at the world moving on, unaware, unbothered by my loss. Back in the living room, my eyes landed on one line. You're angry now, that's okay. Was I angry? I didn't feel anything but emptiness. But her words struck a nerve, like she had predicted my unraveling. This wasn't just a letter. It was something more. A spark meant to pull me forward. Driven by something I couldn't explain, I checked the mailbox again. There it was. Another cream envelope. Same handwriting, same name, same signature. Yours, Amy. My chest tightened. I tore it open right there, shivering on the porch. My love, you're angry, confused. I know you're tearing through drawers and mailboxes, trying to make sense of this, but not everything in life fits your blueprints. Sometimes you just have to trust. You didn't fail me, Tom. You gave me 3 years I'd trade for a lifetime. Remember how we danced in the kitchen to Sinatra? You stepped on my toes and I laughed until I cried. Find that again, someday. Not now. But eventually. Today, just do one small thing. Go to our coffee shop, sit by the window, watch the world. Let it remind you that life still exists, that I'm still here, in little things. Find me. Yours always, Amy. I stared at the page, barely breathing. This wasn't possible. But it was her. Completely her. And somehow, she was still finding a way to reach me. I stepped back into the house, gripping the letter so tightly the edges were starting to tear. My brain, wired for structure and logic, begged for a reasonable explanation. Could Clara have done this? She knew Emily well, her handwriting, her tone. But why? And how could she mimic her voice so precisely? I almost called her, thumb hovering over the screen. But what would I even say? Your dead sister sent me a letter? It sounded insane. Instead, I called the local post office. The woman on the line sounded half asleep and unconcerned. We don't track unmarked letters. Maybe someone dropped it in your mailbox. Helpful. I spent the next hour asking neighbors if they'd seen anything. Mrs. Kelly hadn't. The teenager across the street suggested checking cameras. We didn't have any. Emily always said they ruined the charm of a neighborhood. I returned home feeling more lost than before. I laid the two letters side by side on the kitchen table. One tender, one strangely direct. You're angry now. That's okay. She was right. I was angry. Furious, actually. At the mystery, at whoever might be behind it, and at myself for not being able to let it go. I paced. Maybe Emily had written these in advance? Asked someone to send them? But why now? And in this order? Grasping for answers, I turned on her old laptop. A dusty MacBook with a daisy sticker peeling off the lid. The login was still our anniversary. Inside? Almost nothing. A few photos, watercolor sketches, and one old email from me. No drafts, no clues. No plan. The emptiness of it hit hard. And yet, the second letter mentioned our favorite coffee shop, Bean and Leaf, just a few blocks away. Emily adored that place. Cinnamon lattes, wooden tables, the window view of the street. I used to tease her, calling it dessert in a cup. I didn't want to go. The whole thing felt ridiculous. But something, I don't know what, pushed me to grab my jacket. The street was cold, wet. I walked. Inside the cafe, only a few students sat studying. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window like the letter said. Outside, people passed by, unaware of the ache inside me. Nothing happened. No note, no strange visitor. Just silence, the kind that fills every empty space when you're waiting for something that never comes, until I noticed it. Etched into the window ledge, a small, rough sketch of a daisy. I froze, ran my finger over the lines, shaky, imperfect. Her style. Emily used to doodle daisies everywhere, on napkins, her sketches, the back of my hand on lazy weekends. No one knew that. No one but her. The air shifted, heavy with something unseen, a presence, a breath. Or maybe just my mind wanting too badly to believe. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling she was near. Back home, I laid both letters on the table again. One formal, one intimate. I read them slowly, hoping to find some hidden message between the lines. No answers, just more questions. Was the daisy a coincidence, a clue? Or was I chasing ghosts? But deep inside, where logic couldn't reach, a flicker of something stirred. Hope. Fragile, irrational, dangerous. What if she's still with me? Not in the way I knew, but in these letters, in the little signs I'd always overlooked. I fell asleep on the couch, the letters still clutched to my chest. Morning crept in cold and gray. My neck ached, the room smelled of stale coffee. But I couldn't shake the image of that daisy. I tried to write it off. Coincidence, imagination. But I couldn't let go. I made more coffee, trying to ground myself in routine, but my eyes kept drifting to the envelopes on the table. Part of me didn't want to read them again. Another part knew. They weren't the last. When I stepped out to grab the paper, I saw it. The mailbox door hung slightly open. My chest tightened. There was going to be a third letter. The mailbox held another envelope, same cream paper, same handwriting, same hit to the chest. Tom Harris, bottom corner. Yours, Amy. I didn't open it right away. I walked inside, sat at the kitchen table, and carefully unsealed it. afraid the moment might vanish if I moved too fast. It smelled faintly like vanilla, or maybe that was just memory. Tom, still chasing answers. I see you frowning, trying to force life into straight lines, like one of your blueprints. But life doesn't work that way. It's messy. It flows like watercolors. I need you to open the box in the closet, the one under the blanket. I know you've been avoiding it, but inside are pieces of us. They matter. Don't be afraid, Tom. The past won't hurt you. It'll remind you who you are. You think someone's behind this, a prank maybe. But who else knows about the sneakers you hated or the sunflower painting argument? It's me. Somehow it's really me. Yours, Amy. I stared at the letter. Of course I knew the box she meant. An old wooden chest she called her time capsule. Childhood drawings, tickets, notes. It had always been off limits. Even after her death, I couldn't bring myself to open it. But now, I had no choice. The box was right where she said. I pulled it from beneath the blanket, heart pounding. I hesitated, then lifted the lid. The first thing I saw were her old, tattered sneakers, hideous, beloved things she wore everywhere. I laughed softly and felt the sting of tears. Inside were childhood photos, letters in her handwriting, some to me, some to others. One, written early in our marriage, simply said, Tom, if you're reading this, I've never been happier. A folded reading list caught my eye. Books I want Tom to read. Next to each title, she'd left a note. This one will break you, but it's beautiful. Read when you're ready to let go. Ticket stubs. A napkin with my scribbled note from our first anniversary. You are my best project. A tiny perfume bottle, still faintly scented like her. A sketch of our house from before we moved in. Her brushwork so detailed it pulled me back to when we believed we had forever. I wanted to be mad at her for not telling me about the letters, for forcing me to relive all this, but I couldn't. This was so like her, always finding a way to reach me, even from beyond. I read the last line of the letter again. It's me, Tom. Somehow it's me. Logic told me it was impossible. I thought about calling Clara, but didn't. Instead, I checked the mailbox again, empty. But on the porch, a single daisy petal stuck to the wood, cold, delicate, not a coincidence. Not after the coffee shop. Not after the box. I laid the letters and box contents out across the table, trying to make sense of it all. The more I read, the more it felt like her. Too real to be fake. But how? I didn't have answers. Only more questions. But I also had a feeling I hadn't had in a long time. Hope. That night, I played the old Sinatra song she'd mentioned in the second letter, the one we danced to in our kitchen. I let it echo through the house, closing my eyes, imagining her laughter, her clumsy spins, her arms around me. When the song ended, silence returned, but it felt different. Not empty. Just quiet. Like she was still there, just out of reach. In the morning, another letter appeared. No sound, no sign of anyone. Just waiting. I didn't open it yet. I slid it into my pocket and stepped outside. The sun broke through the clouds. The air smelled like damp leaves. My feet moved without a plan, boots tapping the sidewalk in steady rhythm. And then I stopped. Not sure why until I saw it. A sign I hadn't noticed in years. Familiar. Calling me forward. City Park. Emily and I spent so many evenings there, walking, laughing, or sitting in silence by the pond. Just the thought of it brought a tightness to my chest. Still, something pulled me toward it, like the letters had tied an invisible thread between us. But first, coffee. Back home, I sat at the table and carefully opened the newest envelope. The scent of vanilla, or memory, floated up as I unfolded the paper and began to read. Tom, you're asking fewer questions now. I feel it. Maybe part of you still doubts, but deep down, you know it's me. Thank you for opening the box. I know how hard that was. Now go to the park. Sit on our bench, the one by the pond. Remember the ice cream debates? The time I dropped my sandal in the water and you laughed so hard you hiccuped? You're not alone. I'm in every leaf, every ripple in the pond. Just look. Yours, Amy. I stared at the words, her voice echoing in my head. The park. I hadn't been since before she got sick. It felt too alive without her. But her letter kept whispering, go? Without thinking, I was already out the door. The breeze was cool, the trees gold with autumn. Children played nearby, their laughter cutting through the quiet. Fallen leaves swirled underfoot, and memories stirred with every step. Her laugh when I sneezed mid-photo, our kiss in the rain soaked and smiling, her saying, If we're getting wet, we get wet together. Then I saw it, our bench. It leaned slightly, green paint chipped, but still there. I sat down slowly. The pond was still, ducks gliding lazily through the misty water. Everything felt suspended in time. "I'm here, Em," I said quietly, barely more than a breath. A few minutes later, an older man with a cane approached. His face looked familiar, though I couldn't place him. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. I nodded. He sat with a sigh, tossing food to the ducks. "I used to come here with my wife. Emily brought me soup when I broke my leg. Every day. Said I reminded her of her grandfather." He chuckled. "I'm Jack, from across the street." I remembered Emily mentioning him once, briefly. I'd been too busy then to listen. "She was one of a kind," Jack said. "Fixed my old radio too. Told me music connects the past and present." He left soon after, but something lingered. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely alone. Emily had left pieces of herself behind, in others. A young woman appeared near the pond with a little boy in a pom-pom hat. He skipped pebbles across the water, giggling. I watched without meaning to. Emily had once said that a child's laugh was the purest sound in the world. The woman noticed me and smiled. "You're Tom, right?" she asked kindly. "I'm Linda. Emily taught my son to draw at the library, Saturday classes." She was amazing. "You knew her?" "Not well," she said, "but enough." She was patient with Jake, even when he got frustrated. She told him daisies were the happiest flowers. Jake turned at the sound of his name and ran over, holding a wrinkled drawing in his little hands. "This is for Emily," the boy said solemnly, handing me a wrinkled drawing. She showed me how. 7 petals. She said that was the magic number. I accepted it, my hands shaking. "Thank you, Jake," I said, voice strained. "She'd love it." "I wanted to give it to her," he added quietly, "when she comes back." His mother, Linda, gently squeezed his hand. "Jake, remember, Emily's gone." "But she said she'd be wherever there were flowers," he said, pointing to a patch of yellow blooms by the pond. Linda looked at me, apologetic. "He still hopes." Honestly, so do I. I shook my head. "Don't be sorry." I looked at Jake and nodded. "You're right. I think she's here too." Jake lit up, satisfied. As they left, Linda turned back. "She said your homes made the world more beautiful. Don't forget that. And don't be afraid to start over." "I'll try," I murmured. Alone again, I stared at the drawing. Uneven, imperfect, but full of heart. Something in me shifted. Not pain, curiosity, a quiet urge to see more of the world she'd loved. Jake, Linda, the park, her letters, they were all pieces of her, and maybe pieces of what came next. I folded the drawing and tucked it into my coat. A breeze touched my cheek, gentle, like a whisper. I didn't feel haunted. I felt guided. Back home the next morning, I stood by the kitchen window. Mist rolled over the lawn, and my coffee steamed between my fingers. I wasn't sad, exactly. Something deeper stirred. Awareness, maybe. The daisy Jake had drawn now sat beside Emily's letters. I kept looking at it more than her words. There was something pure in that sketch that spoke louder than anything else. I didn't rush to check the mailbox like before, but habit pulled me to the porch. I slipped on the old jacket Emily used to call my farm chic. Inside the box, another cream envelope. I opened it slowly, heart pounding, not with fear, but something closer to hope. "Tom, you went to the park. I know it wasn't easy. But you felt something, didn't you? A child's laugh, leaves rustling. That clarity, that's you. That's why I loved you. Now I need you to help someone. You'll meet her soon. She's nothing like me, but you'll recognize something familiar. She needs you, Tom. Helping her won't erase me. It honors what we built. Look where life happens. Crowds, noise, people. That's where she'll be. She doesn't know it yet, but she's waiting. Yours, Amy." I reread the line. You'll meet her. Too precise. Too real. Amy had always seen what I missed, but this felt impossible. Still, her mention of where people gather tugged at me. I thought of the Saturday farmers market, Emily's favorite. Apples, baked bread, people talking over coffee. I grabbed my keys and left before I could change my mind. The market buzzed with life. I wandered the stalls, unsure why I was there. Faces passed in a blur, until one stopped me. A woman stood by the flower booth holding her son's hand. She looked exhausted, her clothes clean but worn, her expression calm but tired. The boy tugged at her, asking for an apple. I couldn't stop staring. Not because she looked like Emily, she didn't, but something about her presence felt familiar. Then the boy dropped his bag. Pencils and paper spilled across the ground. I bent to help without thinking. "Thanks," the woman said, her voice soft but steady. "He's always dropping stuff." "No problem," I replied, handing her a notebook. There was a daisy on the cover. Simple, crooked, unmistakable. My heart skipped. "Nice drawing," she gave a shy smile. "It's his. Says daisies look like little suns." My chest tightened. Emily's letter echoed in my mind. "I'm Tom," I said without thinking. "Sarah," she replied. "And this is Oliver." Oliver looked up at me with big, curious eyes. I smiled, and after a beat, he smiled back, and just like that, we started talking. Sarah had recently lost her job at the library due to budget cuts. Then a burst pipe flooded her apartment, leaving her and Oliver living in a cheap motel at the edge of town. She explained it all calmly, but I could hear the exhaustion behind her voice, doing her best to stay strong for her son. "Are you job hunting?" I asked, surprising even myself. "I know a construction company that might need office help." She eyed me, cautious. "Why would you help a stranger?" I hesitated. "It just feels right." We exchanged numbers, and I promised to ask around. After she left, I felt strangely lighter, as though I'd done something that mattered. When I reread Emily's letter, "You will meet her," suddenly felt less cryptic, almost inevitable. The next day, I called Mark, an old friend at a construction firm. He agreed to meet Sarah. I texted her the news. "Thank you, Tom. You don't know what this means." Her response stirred something in me. Not love, but a purpose. A few days later, she called with good news. She'd landed a temporary job. She and Oliver wanted to thank me in person. We met at Emily's favorite cafe. Sarah brought another of Oliver's drawings, a daisy with "Thank you," Tom scrawled in his careful handwriting. It nearly broke me. During our light conversation, she mentioned the motel was getting too expensive. I didn't think. I just said, "I have a guest room. If you need a place, it's yours." Her eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "You barely know us." "I've been in dark places too. I get it." After a pause, she nodded. "Just for now, and I'll repay you." That evening, I helped them move in. The room was simple but warm. Oliver explored excitedly while Sarah remained cautious but grateful. I showed them around, then gave them space. Later, I sat on my bed, Emily's letters spread around me. I didn't know how she'd anticipated this, but it didn't matter. Helping them didn't replace her. If anything, it brought me closer to her. Emily's kindness still lived on, in every small gesture I could manage. I woke to the sound of rain tapping the roof. The dim light painted moving shadows on the walls. I lay still, caught between past and present. Memories of Emily's laugh mixing with Sarah's quiet strength, Oliver's drawings. Their presence had changed the house. I tried not to hover, but in the mornings, the sounds of breakfast and a child humming made the space feel different. Not happy, but hopeful. Later, I stood at the door, coffee in hand, staring out at the quiet street. Checking the mailbox had become ritual, part dread, part expectation. I hesitated, then went outside. Inside the box, another cream envelope, same handwriting. But something about this one felt heavier. Back in the kitchen, I placed it carefully on the table. Sarah and Oliver were out. The silence pressed in as I stared at the letter. I finally opened it. The paper smelled faintly metallic, like rain on asphalt. "Tom, you're afraid." Not of me, or the letters, but of what it means to move on. You think clinging to pain keeps me close, but that's not where I live. I'm not in your grief. I'm in the way you helped Sarah, the way you smiled at Oliver's drawing, the way you keep playing Sinatra. You hide from life because you're scared it'll break you again. But you're already broken, Tom, and that's okay. Broken doesn't mean gone. I want you to do something difficult. Go to the attic. Find the box of my old journals from when we first started dating. Read them, not all, just enough to remember who you were when I fell in love with you. That man is still in there. You're mad at me for these letters. Maybe you even want to toss them. But I know you won't. Because even if you don't believe this, you still believe in us. Yours, Amy. I dropped the letter, my chest tight. Her words struck a nerve. Coward, trapped in the pain. She wasn't wrong. I'd been using grief as armor, and now she was asking me to take it off. How dare she? After everything, after leaving me, after dying without giving me the chance to make things right, now she was calling me a coward? Rage burned through me. My hands clenched. Blood pounded in my ears. It was too sharp, too much. I grabbed the letter and tore it into shreds, scattering the pieces like dead leaves across the floor. But even that didn't feel like enough. I stormed to the attic, as if to prove her wrong or prove something to myself. But deep down, I knew she was right. I was afraid. Afraid to live without pain, because pain was all I had left of her. The attic smelled of dust and old wood. I pulled out the box of her journals, hidden beneath old project sketches. Sitting on the floor, I opened it. Her handwriting flowed from the pages, messier than the letters, but still hers. Tom was arguing with me about bridges again. He's so serious when he talks about work, but when he smiles, I forget what the fight was even about. I think I'm falling in love. I kept reading. Our first dates, spilled coffee, the way she said watching me draw made her feel safe. It all came rushing back. Then I found a page dated just before she got sick. Sometimes I see him shrink into himself like being too happy scares him. I wish he knew how strong he really is. That stopped me. She'd seen me, really seen me, even before I saw myself. I closed the journal, heart aching. Back downstairs, I quietly picked up the scraps of the letter I'd destroyed. I couldn't bring myself to throw them out. I slipped them into her old stationery box. One piece caught my eye. "You still believe in us." I didn't know if I did, but I kept it anyway. That evening, Sarah and Oliver came home. Oliver ran to show his mom a drawing, and she smiled at me, guarded but kind. I offered to make dinner, and to my surprise, she accepted. Over pasta, Oliver chattered about a dog with two different colored eyes. I listened, really listened, and it didn't feel forced. Later, while washing dishes, Sarah talked about raising Oliver alone after his father left. As she spoke, I realized something. Her strength reminded me of Emily's. Not because they were alike, but because they both refused to quit, no matter what. That night, I sat with the letter fragments again. I didn't try to tape them together. I just kept the one piece that mattered. The anger was gone. What was left was something quieter. Resolve. I wasn't ready to let go of the pain, but maybe I was ready to begin again. And maybe that was the point. That night, I lay awake, watching shadows move across the ceiling. The house wasn't silent anymore. It breathed, with Oliver's laughter, the clink of coffee mugs, Sarah's footsteps. Those sounds filled the spaces Emily had left behind. And even if I wasn't ready for it, something inside me had begun to shift. Morning came in gray light. I went to the mailbox. Another envelope, cream-colored, but thicker than the others. Her handwriting looked shakier. "Yours?" Amy was still in the corner, but the lines seemed hesitant. I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stared at it for a long time. The house was still. Sarah and Oliver were gone. I opened the envelope, several pages. Her writing was clean, but slightly uneven. It smelled different, not vanilla, not rain, something bitter, like regret. "My dearest Tom, this will be the hardest letter I'll ever write. I'm sitting in our bedroom listening to you sleep, and I know what I'm about to say might break you. But you deserve the truth. Please forgive me. Before I got sick, I was lost. You were buried in work, your drawings, your projects, and I didn't blame you for it. You were always passionate about your work. But I felt alone. I didn't know how to say it. I was scared you'd think I needed too much. Then I met someone, David. He was an artist in my watercolor class. He listened. He saw me when I felt invisible. It wasn't love. It wasn't even real. Just weakness. A few weeks, some quiet cafes. One day, I let him hold me. That was all. But even that was too much. I hated myself for it. Every time I looked at you, I felt shame. I wanted to tell you, but your eyes, they held so much trust. I couldn't bring myself to break that. And then the diagnosis came. Everything changed. But I couldn't leave without telling you who I really was. Not just the version you loved, but the one who made mistakes too. Please don't let this erase everything else we shared. Please, yours, Emily. I couldn't breathe. My chest clenched like it was being crushed from the inside. The woman I loved had kept this from me, not to protect herself, but to protect me. I didn't know what I felt. Anger, grief, betrayal. But Beneath it all was something deeper. She had trusted me enough to tell the truth. And somehow, through this final letter, she was still asking me to forgive. Not just her, but myself, too. I didn't love David. That's the first thing she wanted me to know. She described him as a reflection, someone who made her feel seen when she was drowning in loneliness, not love. Even then, she said, she thought of me. Of my laugh, my bad music, the way I furrowed my brow while sketching. She wanted to come back to us, but by then her illness had taken the choice away. She wrote that she knew this letter would hurt me, that she could see me reading it, fists clenched, eyes burning. And she was right. I was angry, furious, but she begged me not to let it erase what we had. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked me to see her as she truly was, flawed, human, still in love with me. She left one more thing, a journal entry in a blue notebook written after it ended with David. She asked me to read it when I was ready. When I dropped the letter, my breath caught. Her confession shattered something inside me. I picked up the pieces, heart pounding, and walked to the stairs where the blue journal waited. I didn't want to read it, but I did. I made a mistake. David wasn't love. I thought I'd find myself in him, but I just felt emptier. I watched Tom sleep and hate what I've done. He deserves better. I want to go back, but I don't know how. I love him. God, I love him. I closed the journal with shaking hands. I went back to the table and gathered the torn letter. I didn't try to tape it together. I just placed it beside the others. I couldn't forgive her. Not yet. But I also couldn't let her go. That night, Sarah and Oliver returned. Oliver told me about his day, proudly showing another drawing. I smiled, just barely, but meant it. After dinner, Sarah helped clean. She opened up about her life, the abandonment, the struggle to stay strong for Oliver. As I listened, I realized something. She wasn't Emily. But like Emily, she kept going through pain. That strength echoed through both of them. Before bed, I looked again at the piece of the letter that read, "You still believe in us." I wasn't sure what I believed, but I kept it. Later that night, I sat on the floor in the dark, surrounded by photos of Emily, some torn, some untouched. Her laugh in one, her smile in another, pieces of the life we'd built now scattered like rubble. I had destroyed some of them. I couldn't bear to see her face, couldn't decide if I wanted to remember her or erase her. I didn't cry. The fury had drained into something heavier, numb and unmovable. When Sarah and Oliver returned from the store, their quiet voices carried through the house. I didn't greet them. I didn't move. Their presence, once a comfort, now felt like noise in a space I no longer understood. Sarah came into the living room with sandwiches, then froze at the chaos on the floor. "Tom?" she said carefully. "Are you okay?" I stared at a photo of Emily, laughing, holding a daisy. "You need to leave," I said flatly. "Today." She blinked. "Did we do something?" "This isn't about you," I snapped. My voice didn't even sound like mine. "I just can't." Oliver stepped into the doorway. "But you said we could stay." I clenched my jaw. "I'm sorry, please, just go." Sarah didn't argue. She packed quickly, quietly, gathering their things as if she knew the damage couldn't be undone. Within an hour, they were gone. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house like a final breath. I didn't watch them leave. The next morning, I called my boss. "I'm done," I told him. "Tom, the Henderson project, find someone else," I said, cutting him off. "I'm finished." I hung up, then turned off my phone. The work I once loved now felt like a blueprint for a life that no longer existed. There was no plan left to follow. Just silence. And the fragments of everything I used to believe. Days melted together. I barely left the house. Only for groceries, avoiding anyone I knew. Dishes piled up, dust coated everything. The home I once built with love felt like an empty blueprint I never finished. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in our bed. The couch became my resting place. The silence my companion. I didn't listen to music, avoided the letters, and left the box of her things untouched. Grief had settled over me like fog, quiet, suffocating. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't drink, I just existed. Sometimes I stared out the window, unsure what I was even waiting for. A week after Sarah and Oliver left, I found another letter in the mailbox. Same cream envelope, same handwriting. But I didn't open it. I didn't even want to. I tossed it onto the table with the others, unopened. I didn't want her apologies or her memories anymore. But still, I couldn't throw it out. Every time I walked by it, my eyes returned to the envelope, her handwriting somehow still alive. I hated myself for not destroying it. I hated her for making it harder to let go. One rainy night, I picked it up, held it for a long time. I cut it open, but couldn't read it. Not yet. I left it on the table and leaned back in my chair, exhausted. The days grew darker. I stopped going out altogether, surviving on stale crackers and old coffee. My reflection, if I ever looked, was unrecognizable. Hollow eyes, graying skin, a beard I hadn't meant to grow. I thought of Sarah and Oliver now and then. I hoped they were okay. I regretted pushing them away, but I didn't have the strength to fix it. My world had collapsed to four walls, broken photos, and that one unopened letter. I imagined Emily watching me, not with anger, but sadness. The worst part? I still loved her, even after everything, and I hated myself for it. That night, during a storm, I held the letter again, pressed it to my chest like it could make a difference. I wasn't ready to read it, but I couldn't let it go either. Morning came with gray light and soaked grass. I sat on the porch, coffee cold in my hands, the unopened letter in my pocket, edges worn from too many touches. The house behind me no longer felt like ours, just a shell filled with shadows. I didn't remember how many days had passed since Sarah and Oliver left. I hadn't opened curtains or turned on lights. I hadn't spoken to anyone. But that morning, something stirred. Maybe it was the scent of fresh grass or the sound of children laughing somewhere far off. I took a deep breath. Without planning to, I pulled out my phone and called my father. "Tom?" he answered after a long pause, his voice rough but steady. "Yeah, Dad. Can I come over?" An hour later, I was at his place, a small cottage with a stubborn garden and the smell of old tobacco. We sat at the table with tea neither of us touched. "You look like," he said. "What's going on?" I didn't know where to start, but the words came anyway. I told him everything, the letters, Emily's confession, David, the anger, the photos I'd torn, and how I pushed Sarah and Oliver away. He listened silently, letting it all pour out. When I finished, he rubbed his hands together and said, "When your mother died, I was furious too. Not at her, at everything. I thought my anger was keeping her close. It wasn't. It was eating me alive." "But she cheated," I said bitterly. "How do I forgive that?" "You don't do it for her. You do it for you. Anger won't bring her back or make sense of it. She was human. She messed up, but she loved you. You know that." "I don't know how to let go," I whispered. "She's in everything. She always will be," he said. "But not in the pain, in what you choose next. You sent that woman and her boy away because you thought helping them meant betraying Emily. But maybe that was her final gift, reminding you of who you are. You're a builder, Tom, not a man who tears things down." His words sank deep. I thought of Sarah's quiet strength, of Oliver's daisy drawing. Of all I had pushed away, not just people, but hope. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to try again. I didn't forgive her, not yet. But something my dad said stuck with me. It didn't fix the pain, but it cracked the wall I'd built around it. For the first time in months, I felt like I could move. Back home, I stared at that last unopened envelope. My hands trembled, not from anger, but something quieter, something like wanting to live again. I opened it carefully, like it might break me. "Tom, no more apologies. You know what happened. I won't explain or excuse it. I'm writing to let you go. You don't have to carry my mistakes. You don't have to be my punishment. I want you to live again, to laugh, to build, to feel the sun. You were always more than the man I loved. You saw beauty in structure, in balance. Go back to that. Not for me, for you. This letter is my last gift. If you can forgive me someday, know I've always loved you. Amy." There was no plea, no justification, just truth, raw and quiet. I didn't forgive her, not fully, but I could breathe again. I opened the window, cold air rushed in, and for the first time in forever, the world outside didn't feel like it belonged to someone else. I found myself at a cheap motel on the edge of town. Gravel crunched under my boots. I didn't know if they were still there, but I had to try. "You don't have to be my punishment," she'd written, and that line wouldn't let me go. I knocked. Sarah answered. She looked tired, but not surprised. "Tom?" she said. "I'm sorry. I told her. For pushing you away. That wasn't fair. She studied me, wary but soft. You weren't yourself. I'm still not, I admitted. But if you need anything, I want to help. Oliver spotted me from the bed. You're back, he beamed, running over with a crayon drawing. Look, I made another daisy. I smiled, something loosening in my chest. It's beautiful, I said, and I meant it. We sat in their tiny motel room, faded wallpaper, Oliver's toys scattered everywhere. Sarah explained her job was temporary, and they were still stuck there. I know a guy who rents a small apartment, I offered. Nothing fancy, but clean. I can ask. She hesitated. Why would you do that? Because I need to move forward, and because I can. A few days later, I helped them move in. Just a one-bedroom above a bakery, but it had a view of the park. I carried boxes. Oliver chattered the whole time about school, dogs, and his plan to draw an entire field of daisies. And for the first time in months, I smiled without faking it. After I quit the firm, I drifted. I didn't want to draw, didn't want to build. But eventually, I had to do something. One day I saw a help-wanted ad, local hardware store, manual work, steady hours, no pressure, just what I needed. Now I stock shelves, help folks pick tools, sweep the floor. Roy and Liz, my coworkers, don't ask questions. I come in, work, go home. It's not glamorous. But each day, I feel a little more like myself again. I'm not building grand designs anymore, but I'm rebuilding something else, something quieter. Me. Sarah and Oliver had slowly woven themselves into my life, not as substitutes for Emily, but as something quieter, something steadier. I didn't feel like I was trying to replace anyone. It wasn't about filling some gaping hole. It was just comfort. It came in little things. Oliver proudly showing me his latest sketch, Sarah mentioning her boss liked her neat handwriting, the three of us sipping tea in their apartment, no one needing anything more than what was already there. Maybe that's why I felt so at ease with them, because I expected nothing, and neither did they. One night after work, I walked into my house and realized it didn't feel so hollow anymore. I cleared the torn-up photos still on the floor and wiped down the dusty shelves. I didn't hang anything back up, too much, too soon, but I packed the photos and her letters in a box. I didn't open them again, but sometimes I'd run my fingers along the envelopes, not to relive the pain, but to hear her voice in my mind, the parts of her that still lived in memory. She was right. I was learning to feel again. It wasn't some cinematic transformation, it was subtle. The smell of paint at the store, Oliver cracking up at one of my lame jokes, the grateful look Sarah gave me when I fixed something or just showed up. I hadn't forgiven Emily. Her betrayal still stung like a scar that flares up now and then. But what my father said stuck with me. Maybe forgiveness wasn't for her. Maybe it was for me. Maybe it was what I needed to stop punishing myself. One afternoon, I was helping Oliver with a school art project. We were sketching, and without thinking, I drew a daisy. It came out crooked and clumsy, but it was the kind Emily would have loved. Oliver looked at it and grinned. Yours is better than mine. And I smiled back. Real smile, not one I had to force. I still wasn't making plans, still not dreaming big, but I was living, day by day, unsure but breathing. And with that came something I didn't expect. This quiet sense that I could finally just be who I was. Not for her, not for who I used to be, but for who I was now. And maybe that was enough. I woke early the next morning, the sky still dim with streaks of gold creeping through the clouds. I knew the date. It had been circling me for weeks like a storm I couldn't stop. The anniversary of Emily's death. I never meant to mark it, didn't want candles or ceremonies, but it was there, heavy and unshakable. I stayed in bed, listening as the house stirred. Sarah's footsteps in the kitchen, Oliver mumbling, probably already drawing. They'd become part of my world now, not loud, but steady, like background music you'd miss if it stopped. Eventually, I got up, threw on my old flannel, and headed downstairs. Sarah was buttering toast with her hair in a loose knot. Oliver was at the table, surrounded by pencils. Good morning, he chirped. I'm drawing a bird. Want to see? I leaned over. It was a ridiculous bird with a beak way too big. Nice, I said softly. Looks like it's about to sing something happy. Oliver giggled, and Sarah handed me coffee. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep. She didn't ask why, she didn't need to. And I was grateful for that. Later, I went out for the paper. The mailbox was slick with dew, cold to the touch. When I opened it, my stomach sank. Another envelope? Same cream color, same handwriting. I knew, without knowing how, that this was the last one. It felt thinner, fragile, like whatever was inside could fall apart in my hands. I didn't open it. I just laid it on the table and left for work. The store was quiet. I restocked paint, helped a woman find the right brush, teased Roy about getting the aisle labels wrong. It was ordinary, but in that simplicity, I felt grounded, like the world didn't expect anything of me beyond the moment I was in. Still, the letter haunted me, not with dread, but like a string tugging gently from behind. When I got home, Sarah and Oliver were eating pizza, and he was going on about origami cranes and how his almost flew. Sarah laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that makes a place feel lived in. Watching them, I felt something stir in me. Not grief, not guilt, just a new warmth, something that belonged to me alone. After dinner, I sat back down at the table and picked up the envelope. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I was calm, ready. I opened it. No letter inside. Just a single photograph. Our wedding day. Emily laughing, me looking at her like nothing else existed. On the back, just one question. Are you happy? I stared at it, and everything inside me went still. I didn't cry. It didn't feel right to. That moment asked more of me. I looked at her face, her smile, and for the first time since she died, I didn't feel broken. I felt light. I went outside, took the box of letters, and placed them in an old tin can in the yard. I didn't read them. I didn't linger. I just struck a match and watched the flames consume the last of her words. The smoke curled up into the sky, and I felt no pain. It wasn't about forgetting her. It wasn't about pretending it hadn't happened. It was about letting her go. I hadn't answered her question yet, but something inside me had shifted. It wasn't joy. It wasn't some grand sense of peace, but it was real. I was finally moving. The next morning, I woke up light. I made coffee, helped Oliver pack his school bag, found Sarah's keys for the 5th time that week. We stepped outside together, and I took her hand without thinking. It wasn't a statement, it just felt natural. Oliver walked ahead, bouncing like always. Sarah's hand was warm and a little rough from work, and as we moved down the sidewalk, I noticed the way the light hit the puddles, how the grass smelled freshly cut. Oliver turned and pointed at a cloud. "That one looks like a bird," he shouted. Sarah smiled, and I smiled back. I hadn't forgotten Emily. Her laughter, her daisies, her voice, those lived in me. But I wasn't living in the past anymore. I was here, in this moment, with this boy, this woman, this road, no big finale, no sweeping ending, just life, and I was ready to live it.